And welcome back, Fourth and Long fans. It's your footy correspondent, Coach Donnie Hess here, back with another fan supporter series. It's the off season. We gotta find a way to talk footy to keep footy on our minds until March comes back and the AFL season has returned. So, ladies and gentlemen, I have another interview, and if you can see the YouTube video, you know it's my club. It's the club that I support very much so. But this gentleman here is a legend in Swan circles, for me at least. This guy is an awesome follow on Twitter, an awesome follow on Instagram. That is Zane, red and white. Zane, thank you for joining me, sir.
Pleasure's all mine, Donnie. Thank you very much for having me on, mate.
Uh,
Huge fan of your work also. So it's an honor and a pleasure. So thank you.
Truly appreciate it. Don't want to get your head too big with all those compliments to start off. So, but yeah. Neither I'm the same way. I get compliments, and I just
Well
enjoy
deserved, mate.
the mutual respect there. So let's hop right into it. I know who you are. I follow you all the time on social media, but I want to get to know the people that I chat with a little bit outside of the game of footy. We all talk footy. We all love footy, but I kind of like getting to know the person. So just a little bit about yourself, Zane.
Well, I'm a 42-year-old bloke, obviously, living in Australia, and I'm a father of two kids, two young ones, 3 and 5, boy and a girl. So we've got the set so we can stop. Um, Also married to my wife for 8 years. Been together for 12. We live in a little town just like outside of Geelong, down near the coast. Loving it, down suburbia life. Yeah, I'm a bricklayer by trade, and it's my hobby pretty much. Yeah, that's outside of footy. That's pretty much me.
Oh, don't be humble, sir. You are a fantastic artist for sure. With your upcoming showcase, which I think anybody around that area should go check out. Some of his work on Instagram, absolutely fantastic there. But let's go to footy.
Cheers, man.
We are here to talk football. So I want to know, sir, earliest footballing memory.
Well, earliest football memory, like if I go way back, I can remember running around as a little tacker in the front yard kicking this little plastic brown footy, which was a thing in Australia. Anyone around my age would know what I'm talking about. There's these brown plastic things, and they were for kids because they were a bit lighter than a leather footy, but they were hard as a rock on the end when you kicked them. So if you kick one of these things in your barefoot, you regretted it. But
Hmm.
yeah, would have been running around in the front yard kicking one of those things. The earliest memory would have been, yeah, underneath a sprinkler after my dad's team had won, or dad's team that he followed won the grand final. So yeah, I was out the front pretending I was the players kicking the goals in the grand final, all of that type of stuff. That would be my earliest memory, I reckon. Yeah.
Awesome, awesome. So, and I love the early memories, but what's your favorite thing about the sport of football? Because I mean, it's an incredible, and I've gotten into it a lot later than many people. So you've grown up with it. What's your favorite thing about the sport?
Well, as you say, growing up with it, that aspect has evolved over time. Like initially, it was you're just in awe of these players, their skill, their athleticism. You'd look at them and you think they're like superheroes, these feats that they could do. So you really looked up to them as a kid. And but as the time's gone on through greater understanding and appreciation to the game, I get like right into the nitty gritty aspects of the ebbs and flows of the game as it plays out, and watching teams evolve over time, and especially when they get to the pinnacle, it's I get a massive amount of enjoyment watching other teams also that end up being like amazing teams, such as like say the Lions who won 3 in a row, or the Cats who won 3 out of 5, or even the Tigers recently who almost could have won 4 in a row. But he ended that. Your man Cox in the 2018 prelim there, he played out of his skin that game, and as it was, by Collingwood stopping them going on to have a chance of winning 4 in a row, it stopped them having the chance of being the only other team other than Collingwood, who was the only other team to win 4 in a row.
Mhm.
And also, it was the first time Collingwood had, I just learned this recently, it was the first time Collingwood had beat Richmond in a final since 1937. So it's one of those ones where the stars aligned. And
Mhm.
I love these little stories and intricate things to go on and like learning about it after the fact.
Yeah, definitely for sure. And there's so many great stories, and as you said, and many Americans. I mean, we latched onto it. I mean, I will unabashedly say I was supporting Collingwood in that grand final as much as I'd always liked West Coast style. Like I thought that their kind of journey to the grand final was interesting that year, but there was always a part of me that Mason Cox was there. It'd have been awesome to see, almost like Mike Pike in 2012, kind of give it to Brian Taylor, the fact that a non-Australian was had a chance to win another flag. So we won't go into that. So anybody that watches the YouTube video that knows you're a huge Sydney Swan supporter, as I kind of gave away it early, but so how did you become a Swan supporter being in and around Geelong, or were you born in New South Wales?
No, I was actually born and raised down in Melbourne, and my parents both follow rival teams, Carlton and Collingwood, but they wouldn't let the other like influence me into supporting
I
that
love
team.
it.
So it was left up to me. And it was around the time that the Swans had not long moved to Sydney from South Melbourne,
Hmm.
and they were struggling and so forth. And a beneficial, sorry, that's not the right word, but a bloke came in to help out Dr. Edelstein. I don't know if you're familiar with the whole story. And it was all lights and fireworks and dancing girls. And to a young fella, I was like, well, what's going on here? And then there
Hmm.
was Warwick Kappa, and he was taking mark of the year every second week and kicking goals everywhere. And I was like, yeah, nah, I like this. I'm going for them. But I was taught as a kid, when you pick your team, you stick.
Hmm.
And then from that point on, we had the worst run. We won like 3 wooden spoons in a row. But I was told, no, 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 you're not changing. You've picked now, you're sticking. But we turned it around like on a dime. Barassi came up, Lockett come up, and the next thing you know, we were playing in the grand final in 1996. So that's what I like about this sport as well, is that how quickly your fortunes can change.
That's cool. And the fact that you're a Melbourne boy, did you ever have connections with South, or was it just kind of one of those that the Sydney glitz and glam kind of got you?
There really was just that it was in my face, and I was like, I said, running around outside pretending to be these people. And growing up, everyone used to scream Jesselenko because that was a player
Hmm.
from the '70s who used to like take screamers and everything like that. But then Kappa became that bloke. So you're in the playground and you'd be screaming Kappa and stuff like that. And no, I wasn't really exposed to much South Melbourne stuff until recently. There's through social media, meeting the old fans who are coming back into the fore and learning about the history through just my own interest, going online and getting books and so forth like that. So yeah, there's a lot to learn. It's really interesting stuff, actually. Really.
Yeah, I thought it was really interesting when I decided I was like I looked at it and was like, whoa, they were South Melbourne before they moved up to Sydney in
Mm.
'82, and it was just this fascinating part of their history that there are still South fans that, I mean, still kind of don't argue the club a little bit, but there is a good chunk of South Melbourne fans that really have kind of went, you've embraced us. We love you again. We're going to support you. And I think
Mm.
it's really been helpful, especially in games in Victoria, especially MCG and that. So it's
Mm.
been one of the things that I've kind of loved about it is that yes, they're a New South Wales team, but they have their base in South Melbourne. So it's really, really cool little intricate little part of the club's history that I found fascinating. It was another thing that I fell in love with the club with myself. So let's go back in time still a little bit. Can you remember the first club item you were given or bought?
I can actually, because it was at the same time. There was the first game that I ever went to. My mum, being the diehard Collingwood supporter, she was actually in the cheer squad growing up herself. She was that much of a diehard. She took me down to one of their home games, which was at, I don't know if you're familiar with Victoria Park. It was
Hmm.
Collingwood's home ground back in the day, notorious for being very unwelcoming to rival supporters and players. Anyway, yeah, I bought one of these like scarves, not scarves, headbands. It's like a ninja
Hmm.
headband, and it said Sydney Swans across the front of that. And so here I am, the only red and white you can see as far as the eye can see. And this little kid with his headband, Sydney Swans, little flag, and carrying on. And yeah, that was a crazy day. Yeah, that's been burned in my memory that day. Yeah.
That's a good memory. That's a good memory, though. Sometimes going to hostile territory, you almost kind of enjoy it a little bit, even though they may not have been the greatest team in the world, but it definitely was worth going to it. So we kind of discussed this when we caught up connection, and I love this question personally because everybody does it differently. Everybody fans differently, so I kind of like hearing people kind of describe their fandom. Are you the ride or die? Are you the die hard? Are you the person that you'll watch every single footy show that you can to hear any kind of analysis on the Swans? You'll check the newspaper, you'll check online to see if there's any injuries. So can you describe your fandom to me? Because I think I know because of how much I see on your social media, but I want to hear this for myself. Describe your fandom for me.
Yeah, as you say, die hard is a term. Nuffy is another term that I use for myself. I did used to try and get every single little piece of media, but then just through there's a lot of Victoria bias, so I edit what I would and wouldn't watch, knowing
Hmm.
if I watch certain person's opinions, I know what it's going to be anyway, and so I wouldn't watch that. But yeah, I try to be pretty much across it because I like the interaction online as well. So being knowledgeable with things that are going on, it gives me more conversation pieces that I can have with other fans, which is one of the main things I enjoy about football.
Yeah, and I will definitely say personally that I know of is that you're part of several groups that I'm part of, and the banter on our group sometimes can be fascinating because we go through all sorts of things. I know draft night was fascinating because I was actually
Mm,
doing a podcast at the time, and you guys were going off about what Kinnear Beatson was doing, and it was I was trying to pay attention to it, but I really couldn't because I'm trying to do a podcast. I think for the AFL, I think AFLW had I was an AFLW review round, and it was absolutely fascinating. You guys going back and forth. So the banter is fun. The knowledge is absolutely fascinating. So I love fans like you because you can sit there and you can go, "Hey, what do you think about this?" And you get a different kind of sense of how people see the game and their team and different things like that. So
mm,
absolutely love that. So you already kind of said your first ever game was at Victoria Park. Can you remember the
mm.
result? How the Swans do that night? Can you do that day? Can you remember?
Yeah. Well, I knew that we lost. I remember that fresh in my memory. The rest of the memory was a bit hazy, but like we were just speaking about through talking backwards and forwards to people online, I went on to learn because even the date was a bit fuzzy when it happened, but I remember that one of the Swans players, got their teeth knocked out during the
Oh
game.
boy.
And that was the loudest cheer for the day, was for the Collingwood bloke who knocked the guy's teeth out. And so I was talking to people online. As it turned out, it was in 1987. So
Mhm.
I was at 87. Yes, like I said, my memory's fade. It was 92, actually, I think. And yeah, we lost. They let us know about it, but live and live and die by the sword and all that. So can't win them all.
Yeah, it happens. But hey, you got to go see your Swans play, and sometimes that's just worth the trip that in of itself. So let's go to it. I asked this question. I know it's not easy for some because for many this is difficult. This is like choosing your favorite child. Can you pick your favorite player of the past and favorite player currently on the Swans list?
Past is really hard because, like I said, I'm old, so I've been around watching it for a while. So there's different eras, but definitely Paul Kelly is like one of my favorites because of those dark times where we won the three wooden spoons in a row. And being in Victoria, everyone's like growing up through primary school, everyone follows footy. And everyone's like, why do you follow the Swans for? They're crap. They haven't won a game in like 3 years and stuff. But then there was Paul Kelly. And it's like, there was the light. It's like, look at this guy, come on. And then he won the Brownlow and everything like that. So he's got a space in my heart. Definitely one of my favorites. Another bloke is, you can probably see behind my shoulder, is Adam Goods.
Hmm.
He, to me, is one of the greatest players of all time. He could do it all. So for past players, it's definitely between Kelly and Goods. Currently, I'm a huge Papley fan. I always have been since the day he came through the door. We've been screaming out for a crumbing forward, and he's just that energy that when you need a goal, that he's the guy who gets the goal and then gets the team up and about. So yeah, I'm a huge Papley fan. And outside of him, it would be again a contest between two. It would be Papley or Heaney because I think that Heaney can be the best player in the entire competition. He's got it in him, and we have not seen the best of Heaney yet.
Mhm. And, he, and I'll tell you this. I don't know if you've listened to some of my podcasts, but my favorite player on today's roster is not one everybody would say, and that's Dane Rampy. I absolutely love Rampy's game because he's just one of those guys that he just gets the job done. He's not flashy. He's not the silk that is Isaac Heaney or the Luke Parkers or the raw emotion that is Tommy Papley, which Papley's one of those that he's one of those on your team, you love him. On another team, you absolutely despise him because he's so much energy and because he gets under your skin so much. But Dane Rampy's one of those guys that I've always loved his game because he's so unassuming, but he gets the job done. And he does it against guys that sometimes are bigger and stronger than him, and he still finds a way to get it done. So he's always been one I've always loved. I've always been a Buddy Franklin fan, even when he was with Hawthorne. I always loved Buddy. I think it's just hard not to gravitate to him. But Dane Rampy has really captured my one of the things. And again, maybe it's the coach in me that I like, that the unheralded type of guy. So I had to see what you thought on that. So
Oh, and because you're a Swans supporter, he really epitomizes the Swans culture as well. Like you're saying, he's undersized. He's not like your superstar type guy, but he gets
mhm,
the jobs done. He's always there fighting tooth and nail to the death. Like in that final against Collingwood just previously, that's run down smother with the Collingwood guy running into the open goal. Thinking, they're going to win, we're out. And then Rampy just comes from nowhere and shuts him down. And that's just
mhm.
Rampy through and through.
Oh yeah, 100% agree. And then I think he's training his heir in Robbie Fox, honestly. I think Robbie Fox is the next guy to take that mantle of the unassuming guy that everybody's going to love just because he just gets the job done. So be
Oh,
very
yeah.
fantastic on that. So I got to ask this. We've had some recent success that I think a lot of people would think about. So most memorable moment as a Swan supporter.
Most memorable moment. Like, could I say this whole year? Like this year for me, now personally for me, it's
Hmm.
been insane. Like we're saying, growing up in Victoria, the odd man out when you go to games and everything like that. I finally got to a home game this year for the first time in my entire life, and it actually ended up being round two when Buddy kicked his thousandth goal.
Hmm.
So it just started off in the highest of highest notes, and then I went on to going to see my first ever finals win, sitting amongst the cheer squad behind the goals against Melbourne. And then I got to the grand final. Even though we lost, it was still an awesome experience, especially on the back of everything with COVID and not being able to get out and do things. So this year, as a whole, it really is my most enjoyable memory as a Swan supporter.
Well, I will definitely say this for the people that are listening this that are not in some of the Swan sports. When Zane actually got on TV in the Melbourne win, and everybody freaked out and was like messaging. I saw so many of the message boards and they were like, "Oh my God, I saw
When I got
Zane!
back to my
Zane's behind
phone,
the goal." It was
I got back to my
gold.
phone after the game and it was just like notification, 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 notification. I was like, what the hell is going on? And then all these screenshots of people's TVs in their living rooms with my bloody head on it.
Oh, I laughed so hard. I was like, "Oh my God, it's Zane!" I'm like, I know he's gonna get tons of response. Everybody's gonna say something it's like, dude, mate, we saw you on TV. You were on the telly. It's oh man, I was laughing
Even
so
when I got
hard.
back to work on the Monday, because I live in Geelong,
Hmm.
I've gone to work and people are going, is that you on the tally? I'm like, yeah, yeah, that was me. Yeah, carrying on like an idiot. That was me. Yeah.
There's your 50 minutes of fame, sir. Definitely
Yeah.
for sure. Absolutely. Fantastic. So and actually this is a perfect little lead in because my next question is I came into this season as a Swan supporter. I mean, I was expecting well, not expecting, but I really thought we could make finals. But I was not at all expecting or even in the realm of top four this year. So, what were your thoughts on this season? Because this did kind of come out of nowhere because I knew they were good. I think I really thought they had a chance to make finals, but top four this season and getting all the way to a grand final was not exactly on my high list of what I thought was possible this season.
Yeah, no. No, like you say, you can't go in even ever expecting to make a grand final because they're just so hard to get there, let alone win. But
Mhm.
going off the back of last year, where we lost by a point in the first final to GWS, I knew that was going to put a fuel in their guts over that preseason. to really push again. So I was very buoyant that, like, okay, we've got a great list here of kids that have come on fast because they've been given opportunities early. And if it all clicks and gels, yeah, we could really push those top teams and possibly make a top four. But then there was times throughout the year when we just fall
Mm-hmm.
away, and it's just like, okay, is this because we are such a young team? We're going to have our ups and downs and everything like that. But they were learning on the go, and you were like riding this wave of emotion and excitement throughout the year. It's like, oh, actually, we got something special here. And then they had that run at the end. It was perfectly timed just to hit the finals. But unfortunately, just fell at the last hurdle. Like I say, they're so hard to get to, let alone win.
Mm-hmm. No, 100% agree. It was the one thing I had actually, I have a mate over here who's a huge cat supporter and also has a podcast called The Yank on the Footy. Absolutely incredible guy named Craig Wessels. And he'll love, I'm getting him another shout out in another episode. But he had me on and he asked me, he goes, could you tip the grand final? And I said, honestly, I said, I can tip it two ways. And I'm scared about one. And he kind of looked at me kind of odd. And I said, well, I think if the Swans win, it's going to be close. I think it's going to be a top. I said, I worry that if the Cats win, they blow the Swans out. I was worried the entire time that there was so much emotion, there was so much energy that went into beating the Pies. And again, it was an incredible game in that preliminary final. As much as you hate heart palpitations as a Swans fan, it was so thrilling when you got the win. You were super excited about it, but you just worried that and the fact that you weren't sure was Sam Reed's abductor injury as bad as what we thought. Unfortunately, as we saw in the grand final, it was. And will Coach Longmire rue that decision? I don't know. I will it would it have changed the result? I don't think so. I don't think that much, but it definitely might have structured us a little bit better if an experienced head like Sam Reed was fully healthy. So there's some things that you could question, but you got to look at it. An experienced guy in a grand final, he'd been in grand finals. It's hard not to give him a go. He done so much. It's just the problem is a really good Cats team played one of its best games, and the Swans had one of its worst games at the same exact time. So there's
Yeah.
nothing to lower your heads at.
No. And I was saying they were so young that was actually we were the youngest team to ever compete in the grand final as an average age, and Geelong were the most experienced team to ever compete in the grand final. So you put those two against each other, and you kind of know where it was going to go. Everything was going to have to go right for us on the day. Unfortunately, everything went right for them on the day, so it
Mm-hmm.
even more so was in their favour.
Yeah, the Swans needed to get up early and get a nice lead to put some pressure on the Cats. And when the Cats took a lead, I was like, oh, this is not good. This is not good. So it happens. And the crazy part about it is you say that youngest age. It's like think about it. If you take Buddy off that list, if you take
Oh,
Sam Reed off that list, you take Luke Parker and Dane Rampy. I mean, how much younger that team would then get from
yeah,
there. So that's what's really
yeah.
scary about this Swans roster is there's so many kids under 27 that are on this roster that are getting games and significant time. It's going to be fun. So we go from this season to the off season, as I kind of said earlier. We have we have some couple of Swans chat boards. You guys were talking the draft, so I know you keep an eye on the off season. So thoughts on the off season with Aaron Francis coming in the trade period? A little bit of a surprise for me, but I think a pleasant addition. And then the draft picks. Kind of what are your thoughts on this?
There's been a few rumors about Francis coming over, and I didn't mind it because he is a talented bloke. He's had his battles that he hasn't overcome, and hopefully it's one of those ones which the Swans are famous for. Get a guy in, new environment, and they excel again. So he could really fit in really, really well. He could almost replace Reed, like we're talking about. He can be
Mm-hmm.
that swingman who goes forward back. So he can plug gaps. He's experienced, so he's not going to take a long time to come on where the other draftees that we've got, they can't be straight plug and play because you have to develop them over time. Other than Constancy, who was our first pick, the small forward is the type of guy who can just come in and impact straight away. And people weren't overly excited about the pick because everyone's midfielder
Mm-hmm.
these days. But outside of Papley, we didn't really have that goal kicking small forward. We've got small forwards like a Wicks and
Mm-hmm.
so forth, but that like goal sneak who can just crumb at pace, and but he's also renowned for his pressure. So he's got already got the Swans mentality, and he's got the connection with Papley. He played for the same junior club. He actually reached out to Papley 2 years ago about getting some tips about how to go about things. And so apparently Papley's been in Beatson's ear saying, this guy, this guy, this guy. And so once they got him, Papley's like, yeah, nah, that was me. That was me.
Love it. Well, and the scary part about it is think about him. Think about him and Papley in the same
Oh, I
forward
can't wait.
pockets with the Logan McDonald at full forward and Buddy at that center half forward being the rotational kind of center half forward, full forward role. And then you have more flexibility. You can move Hayward up. You can move Hayward up to that halfback flank, move Heaney to halfback flank. Think about that scary six as your forward lines. And then that lets some of these youngsters like Braden Campbell go into the midfield or maybe even back. You Callum, because like when we were discussing earlier with the Giants loss before 2 years ago when they lost the Giants, Callum Mills was hurt. So there's so many things. I'm really excited about this young team. The draft picks, like I said, I think Constantine could be the only one I think that debuts this year. We'll have to see. The Swans are they're
Oh,
notorious, and I got to bring up the name that I think every Swans fan wants to hear, and that's Will Gould.
number three,
Will we
gold. Yeah,
see
I
the
knew you were going to
Gould
say that.
appearance? Will we see it this year?
Oh,
I ask you. I think we do. Honestly, I
I
think
do.
with some of the injuries, and the fact that Patty McCartan again, I like having that backup. I think Will Gould. I think he's got a good shot this year.
Definitely. Going off his form in the back end, especially in the VFL, he was named emergency like numerous weeks in a row. All it was going to take for one guy not to come up that week, and he was next man in. Like a Rampy could have got a soft tissue injury as he's getting older. Anyone on that time, he can, like we're saying, plug and play. He had fitness issues originally, but he's
Mhm.
worked through those. Then they said they was talking about learning positioning against different size players because he's like Ramp. He's that undersized backman who's not small enough to play on the smalls, but he's not tall enough to play on the monsters.
Balls. Yep.
So he's been learning his body positioning against multifaceted size blokes. And I've watched a fair bit of VFL last year, and towards the back end, yeah, he looked like he was ready to go.
No, I'm excited. I really really hope so because I think from everything that I've seen, I think the kid's got an immense talent. I think with the Swan style, I think he'll work in perfectly. So we'll jump from off season to we're getting closer. We're getting closer to March, which means AFL. Do you have, and I hate using expectations because I think it's a word that you expect something and I never expect anything. I kind of come in optimistic. What are your thoughts for next season? Do you think it's another top four? Do you think it's another chance for a grand final? What are your kind of your thoughts on that?
I'm much like yourself. You can't expect anything because the unexpected will happen. You are going optimistic because we do have such a great list, but anything can happen. We had a great run with injuries, but we've had a shocking run previously as well. So I
Mm-hmm.
know how quickly that can turn. If I had to say expectations, I expect us hopefully to play finals. And then that's as far as I'll go because everything outside of that, too much can happen, especially how close this competition is these days.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Melbourne won the flag, went 12-0 at the start of the year, and everyone thought, these guys, they're just going to go back to back. We might as well just write their name on the cup now. And then they just and they went out straight sets. And so you look back on it and people say the year was a failure, but come finals time, anything can happen. So you can
Mm-hmm.
be as brilliant as they were, and you don't even get there.
Well, I think it's a little bit too. Melbourne ran into a little bit, and I actually remember hearing somebody state it, and I actually looked into it. Of that 12 and 0, 11 teams did not make finals. So there is a little bit that you could question Melbourne a little bit, and the same intensity that they had the season before they didn't have. So, but the funny thing is you and me as Swans fans, what was the talk going into that preliminary? What was the talk going into that qualifying final? Melbourne's back. Melbourne's going to win. The Swans won't their young team won't be able to put pressure on this experienced Demons team. And what happened?
Mhm.
I mean, you were there. I mean,
Oh,
there were a few times that Melbourne kind of put a little bit of pressure and they got ahead on the Swans, but the Swans just kept coming, and eventually the D's
mhm.
cracked. And when the Swans get going, it's very, very difficult to do. So, like, it's one of those. I agree with you. I said, if I say expectation, I think they make finals next year. But I've
Mhm.
also said in a few communications, I think there's up to 14 teams next year that can make
Oh,
finals. That there are
yeah,
that
totally.
many teams that could be that good. How do the Saints back up this season? How do the Giants do? Do the Giants tumble down with the new coaching staff? How does Richmond do? Because Richmond
Carlton.
was right there. The
Mhm.
Western Bulldogs, again, they just
Mhm.
barely get in. Do they improve? Can Collingwood back up last year, this year? I'm interested to see. They're my enigma team this year, in many, many ways.
Mhm.
So, alrighty. So we're gonna have some fun with this next question. I love this one because this sees how much you pay attention. I'm gonna install you as the list manager for the Swans. All 17 teams in the AFL are open. You can pick one player from the entire comp to bring into the Swans to give us that hump over that jump over to get to a grand final and maybe a grand final win. Who's that one player and why?
All right. Well, if we're ignoring like age demographic because it's just plug and play going into this season to get it done, I'm going Max Gorn because we haven't had that tap ruckman that's going to just give our midfielders the opportunity to dominate out of the centre. And also, he's brilliant around the ground as well. Like I could easily say a Petrarca or a Bontempelli because they're superstars and they can just turn a game on their head. But to fit our team, I'm going Max Gorn every day.
If you really look at it, that would be one of the one deficiencies. Like Hickey is great. Like Ruck Jesus is awesome. I think we've all fallen in love with Hickey so much and the way he's played. But we know that his time is limited. I mean, he's not going to have many more great seasons left. I mean, we're going to hope, we're going to pray, and we're going to think about it. And but I agree with you. Like Maxcon would be like a perfect. The only other thing that I would say of maybe a big body midfielder like a Bontempelli or a Dangerfield, just to give us a little more girth, because I think we all remember those years when Joey was absolutely the beast in the midfield, and then he had Luke Parker, and then you could use a roll bottom, a Warner as that speed out of the midfield. So maybe a big body midfielder would be my only other thought too. But again,
I'm
to
hearing
each
that.
their own.
I'm a little bit different with the big body thing than most people. I think you can still do it with grunt. And there's a bloke
Mm-hmm.
coming through called Sheldrick, and I've seen that
Yes,
guy
yeah.
get in and under, and if he'll be able to feed it out, and even a row bottom, he's hard as a cat's head.
Mm-hmm.
To get these guys in there, winning the ball, and getting it out to the outside to the players, like you said, with the Warners breaking away and even feeding out to, I reckon Errol's going to get time in there.
Mm-hmm.
Like not a big body would be great to like even to go against these other big bodies so that they don't get it. But I think
Mm-hmm.
these little guys they can still get it, and I reckon this Sheldrick bloke, mate, he's going to be something special.
Yeah, everything that I've heard from about Gussie, I think he's definitely going to be one we're definitely going to keep an eye on for sure. So
Mm.
so I'm going to ask this next question is one of my favorites because I'm really interested because everybody has a different opinion on this. And being a Melbourne-born person, the grand final for 2 years in 20 and 21 was outside of Victorian soil, and for many people it kind of teased a little bit a lot what we have over here with the Super Bowl. It's the traveling championship game. So if the MCC wouldn't have its 50-year contract, would you be okay with a traveling grand final? Or do you like the tradition of the MCG?
I like tradition, but I'm all for it traveling. Like it's people say more people can get to the game at the MCG because it holds so many, but
Mm-hmm.
when you actually break it down to the people that get to go, it's a lot more corporate. So it's not really the fans going anyway. So it's hard to get to travel and everything like that for families to get down to Melbourne to see it, let alone get a ticket. So if it moved around, it shares the experience around. I don't think people are missing out. You're actually including more that wouldn't even be able to get to Melbourne to watch the game. So I'm all for it.
Mhm.
Plus,
Yeah.
there's a whole advantage that the Vic teams get by playing at the MCG all the time. Don't get me started on that.
You can always tell when it's somebody that's a fan outside of Victoria and when they don't, because it always gives you two different answers. Again, I have no preference. I think there's the grandeur of the MCG, a hundred
Mm.
thousand. Again, I agree with you. There's so many corporates that it does kind of lose its luster a little bit. I mean, people get tickets. I mean, the supporters are there, the fans are there, but it does take it away a tiny bit. And the Super Bowl sometimes even has that too. The ticket prices are ridiculous. If you actually saw some of the ticket prices, it's insane. But unfortunately, that's you got to make the
Business.
money. Unfortunately. All right. So we actually my next question goes a little bit more towards this upcoming season because the AFL decided to kind of steal something from Australia and the NRL and Magic Round that is being called the Gather Round in South Australia. So, as a Melburnian, as a Swans fan, and hearing that if you go to Magic Round as a member of you get free tickets, are you thinking about going over to Gather Round? And kind of what are your thoughts on this?
The wife would kill me if I picked up and went into state to watch another game of footy on the back of it just recently. But I can understand their reasoning behind it as far as trying to develop the game in other states. And like the players are going to get, apparently they're going to get a bonus out of it for playing this, and the clubs are going to get a bonus out of playing it. So after the whole COVID thing, and they took player cuts, and clubs haven't been making as much money, and there's been cuts there. So if the AFL is willing to roll the dice and feed a bit of money around, I mean, yeah, go for it. I'm not hugely across it per se, but I mean, for people in Adelaide, it'll be great. I mean, just get down every day, whatever. Go watch a game. Yeah, it'd be awesome for them.
Yeah, it'll be really interesting. I know there's one in the Barossa Valley that I think has ruffled a few feathers with it being a little bit farther away, and there's only like a 3,000 seat capacity. It'll be interesting to see. I'm fascinated because I know South Adelaide and Sydney were the two highest on that. And I think South Australia kind of basically said, yeah, if you send it to Sydney and it sucks, we're not going to want it the second year. So it was I'm very interested to see does South Australia go and
Mm.
make their prime minister look like a genius, or does he not and make him kind of look like a muppet? I'll be fascinated to see how that one goes. So we'll jump away from the AFL and we'll jump to the AFLW. And you and I go back and forth on the AFLW. We both are huge supporters on it. So, kind of what were your thoughts on this last season? I know it was an expansion side. It wasn't always easy to watch, but personally for me, I watched every single game, every single minute, and I saw development. I think there's a lot of young talent that I think just needs time on field. So this season, as frustrating as it was for some fans that there was no wins, I saw a lot of positives. I saw a lot of good things. So what were your thoughts on it?
Well, just echoing your thoughts, really. I mean, such a mishmash of players coming from here, coming from there. But like at a drop of a hat too, like they changed the start time of that season. Can't remember how much by, but it was
Six
just
and
like, okay,
yeah,
quick, fly here, there, go. You're
yeah.
playing with them, you're playing with them, you're playing with them, and it was go. They were really learning on the go, pretty much. Like you say, they didn't get a win, but you saw development, and that's all you can ask from the get go. And
All
they've
right.
taken that route. They didn't go. It would have been hard to get players. They didn't have a lot of time to try and get in the bigger stars from other
Yeah.
clubs and give them reasons to move state and everything like that. So
Mhm.
we'll see what happens this preseason if we get any more marquee players that helps fill out those gaps or not, because it's going to be a hard sell getting these part-time footballers. They're not. It's not a full-time profession yet, so it's a very hard sell to get someone who's got a profession and a family to uproot and leave. So it'll be interesting.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I think it'll be interesting to see how sign and trade period goes this year because will they try? Will they try again to try to get an elite level player up there, especially with the new pace out with the new
Mm.
pay format that they had in this last CBA, and as long as the next CBA is kind of similar, it'll be interesting. I think it's definitely a possibility that maybe they can bring in just kind of that connecting part to get them kind of going a little bit. I'll be fascinated to see it. And since you watched a lot of the games, did you have a favorite player on this on the AFLW side this year?
And the Swannies, oh yeah, mate. I'm a diehard Cynthia Hamilton fan. I from day one, the way she went about it, again, it's that Paul Kelly aura about her, where it's just like see ball, get ball, you're not stopping me, and if you've got it, I'm stopping you, and I just love that. And around goal, she's like a Papley almost. So it's like two of my favorite players just embodied in one, and I just magnetized to her as my favorite from the get go. Yeah, she's brilliant.
Yeah, I remember when I talked with Brianna Tarrant, I remember saying I saw her pre-draft video, the kind of the draft video, and I saw her footage and the way she went into tackles, like she was so physical, she was so at the footy. I said, Swans fans are gonna fall in love with her, and she hasn't even donned the jersey yet. I said, if they see this video, Swans fans are gonna fall in love with her. And then she does the helmet and she gives
Yeah,
it to a young girl, and then the young girl puts out a TikTok saying she wants to be. I said she is set. I said she is
yeah.
a fan favorite and only played one game, and she's the fan. I can almost guarantee you she's a fan favorite, and the fact she's a New South Wales girl makes it
Mm.
even better. So absolutely fantastic. I
And a
can't
Sydney
wait.
supporter, a whole family of Sydney supporters as well.
And her sister Lexi is also a
Yes, the
huge
whole
Swan. So,
family,
so
mate.
yeah, there's actually a few Nuffy. There's actually a few Swans Nuffies that are on the team. When I talked with Brianna, she said Alana Woodward was also a very huge Swans Nuffy. Oh yes, so I absolutely love that in that conversation.
Yeah,
Is
that's
there's
cool.
there's
Yeah,
4 or 5 that are huge Swan supporters on there.
that's
So
so cool.
oh
So
yeah,
cool.
oh yeah, absolutely. So
But outside of her, Montana Ham, I'm so excited to see her next year. This year, how she did that traveling backwards and forwards to Victoria, like
in year
doing
18,
her,
yep,
her
in year
studies and so forth.
yep.
And she had moments watching her and remind my previous favourite player before the Swans got a team was Brianna Davey. And I see a
Mhm.
lot of her in Montana Ham. And so next year, she's going to be like our marquee player, I reckon. I really do.
Yep. She wasn't
I'm
number
not
one
putting
overall
it,
for
and
for
you
no
don't know,
reason.
you know.
She was not. And Sophia Hurley, I think
Oh, yeah.
those three, those were our top 3 draft picks. I think all 3 of those, the fact that they get to grow up and grow together, I think will be
Mm,
fantastic. So we get to some of my final questions, and for me, this is fun because I'm doing a little bit of research. As I told many people, I'm gonna get to Australia eventually. It is on my
yeah.
bucket list. I'm gonna come to games, so I'm getting some intel on when I go, some things I need to know. So my first, again, I'm an American. We enjoy food at our sporting event. Favorite food at the footy?
It's got to be a meat pie. It's got to be a meat pie at the footy, but I'm not huge for eating at the footy because there's not a lot of time. I don't like to leave my seat when I'm watching a game. Like, I don't even go for a drink that much. Like, maybe half time because it's the biggest break. I'll make a mad dash to the bar and back. But outside of that, I my thing is I like to go to a pub beforehand, sit down, hopefully meet up some other fans. Have it's called a chicken parma. I don't know if you're
Mm-hmm.
familiar with it. It's a big
Chicken
pub
parm, yep.
meal. Yeah, chicken parma. Have a parma in a pot, as it's called in Australia. A
Mm-hmm.
pot of beer and a parma with a side of chips. Sit around with blokes, Sheila's talking footy. Head off to the game together, and that's it. Yeah. Now, I'm not huge footy food because it's not great quality, to be honest, mate, and it's inexpensive.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I completely understand that. I know when I go to sporting events over here, I usually get there early, like right when doors open, so like an hour
So,
before game starts, and I'd go get my food then because then
yeah,
I can go to my seat, take my seat, and I'm good. I will
that's
eat
it.
my food, have whatever drink I have, and if I have to, if there's a break in play where I can get away, to use the restroom. But other
Mm,
than that, I'm in that seat and I'm not moving. I,
mm.
I ain't going nowhere. Like if I'm
I
gonna
feel
do
you.
anything, I'm gonna do it before. Like it's always
Yeah.
before. Like as soon as I get in the arena, get whatever and go to the Swan shop or whatever.
Mm,
If I want to get any merchandise, and then I'm in my seat and I'm in my seat for the rest of the time. So
that's
I know
it.
exactly how you feel on that one. You want to get to your seat. You just want to take it all in. So
That's
I,
it.
well,
Yeah.
speaking of seat, when you go to the games, I know you said you got to go see some games this year. Where's your ideal place to sit to watch the footy?
There's different elements and different people. Um, my favorite spot, I like to sit just one level up because when you sit like level with the field, you can't see the play unfold. And if you're a big footy head like yourself, get
Mhm.
that next one up because you can because you can use your peripherals as well. You can take in the entire field, unlike on TV. You miss when you see a game live, mate. It's a different experience. You
Mhm.
see it unfolding in front of you, like players leading the space, and you're like, kick it there.
Yep.
It's a different thing watching it live. But yeah, one level up is awesome for watching the play unfold and appreciating the game. For atmosphere, if you can sit behind the goals with the cheer squad, yeah, nah, that gets the blood pumping. I did that, like I say, in the final this year. That was the first time I've done that, and that's gone down in history as one of the most enjoyable games I've ever been to as well.
Awesome, awesome. So all right. And I end my episodes with this just because I love hearing the answers because everybody is different. Favorite game of footy you have ever seen live on television at the ground. What's your favorite game of footy you've ever seen?
Live would have to be. I saw Tony Lockett kick 16 goals straight one day, and that was as a young fella. Again, we'd done nothing. We hadn't won nothing. I hadn't seen a win even for so long. And we went down to it was it's called Whitten Oval. It was a little suburban ground. There might have only have been 10,000 people there, but those 10,000 people were changing ends. Well, not they weren't all 10,000 at one end, but all the
Mhm.
people. Sydney was kicking that way. Quarter time change, we went that way. So did the fans because they followed Tony Lockett because that's what was going on,
Yeah.
and that was an amazing experience. But as far as favorite game ever is 2012 grand final. That's one of the best games I've ever seen. And having that attachment as a Swan supporter, there's so many little subplots and things that happened in that game. It's like sitting down and reading a novel when I watch that game. I just love it.
That is one game I have that on my iTunes and I watch that game at least once every year because
Yeah.
it's still like as I've said to a lot of people, that's one of the things that solidified me as a Swan supporter because I love the style, the hard tackling, physical pressure footy that they played that particular season, especially in that grand final. And it's so back and forth. Hawthorne goes on a
Mm.
run, Sydney goes on a run, Hawthorne goes on a run again, Sydney goes on a run. It's still weird for me because Buddy's in Hawthorne colors, so it's
Mm.
still it kind of mind bends me a little bit sometimes because I'm like, oh crap, I forgot Buddy's with the other team in this game.
There's a
So
moment in that game late after Adam Goods, well, as you know, Goodsy did his knee in that game, but stayed
mm-hmm.
on.
Yeah,
Donnies, ACL,
PCL, I
ACL,
believe.
whatever. And he just could only run in straight lines. He couldn't turn. So he just stayed on and just played out the game pretty much and kicked that famous goal at the end
Mm-hmm.
to put us in front. I can't remember my memory's
Yep,
shot, like I say.
I think it
But
was
yeah,
7 because I remember cometh the moment, cometh the champion was the
that's the one.
call.
Oh, Bruce.
And yep,
Yeah.
Bruce
But there's a
McAvaney.
moment there when Franklin's coming outside of 50, coming towards the ball, and Goods is coming the other way, and neither of them will stop, and these two Goliaths just collide, and you watch Franklin bounce off Goods, and it's just like, oh, it was
Mm-hmm.
like two monster trucks just going at each other. It's brilliant. You got to go back and I'll try and timestamp it for you because it's an awesome moment.
Yeah, definitely for sure. So, that, ladies and gentlemen, is going to do it for our episode. Again, another fantastic conversation. Zane, thank you so much for joining me. You were one of my favorite follows, so I had to get you on as my Swan supporter. So, thank you so much for joining me today.
No, thank you for the opportunity, mate. It's been fun.
I know it gets fun to just kind of talk footy and just have a little bit of banter.
Yeah.
Absolutely enjoy it. So, ladies and gentlemen, we are still early in my series. Again, I'm going to talk to AFL fans. Keep an eye out. I'm going to also talk to Waffle fans and Sandful fans this year. So, this is going to be a fun off-season series. Keep an eye on it. They're going to come thick and fast very, very soon. So, keep an eye, and we will be back very, very soon.